Namaskaram and welcome to P Guru's channel. This is Daily Global Insights, episode number 137, April the 8th. Hello and welcome. And I am with Sridhar Chityalaji. Today is a Thursday. Sridharji, Namaskaram, and how are you doing, sir?
Namaskar. Good morning on this wonderful Thursday morning. No, wonderful, sir. Keeping, getting there slowly. And thank you. Looking forward.
And in the main points today, Indian vaccine diplomacy in Paraguay and Taiwan, tacit support for India on vaccines. And this is a very important story. We will cover it in more detail. Iran, we are not talking to Biden unless US lifts all sanctions, not just the nuclear ones. And China wants Washington not to boycott Winter Olympics. Jamie Dimon says Fintech is one of the biggest competitive threats to banks. And Make in India, Modi government approves 4,500 crore scheme for solar PV modules to reduce the imports by 17,500 crores per year. In US news, Biden administration, in a case of blowing embarrassment, spends $250 million on Palestinians, claims payments legal despite anti-terror laws. What are your thoughts, sir, on this point?
The point is that $250 million, there's no mechanism to manage the distribution that would occur in those territories. The issue that is being raised by one and all is many of these, much of this amount gets dispersed as pension payments and security payments and all those kinds of things. There's no mechanism to validate whether it is going into those people who are being considered as terrorists or who are, anti-kind of state type of actors. And the US law forbids making such payments and encouraging when there is no controls. It's quite worrying. If you recall, first we started with 75 million allocation to Palestine. Then we went to 125 million. Now there's an official confirmation that is being floated, and this could be coming up in House and Senate hearings, to 250. So the question therefore is, what exactly is the amount, and how is COVID responsible for making these payments to all these foreign nations who in many ways are an implicit threat to the structure of United States? It's a fundamental question.
And in Iran news, Iran says we are not talking to Biden unless the US lifts all sanctions, not just nuclear ones. I have the picture here, sir, where you see the Ayatollah standing in front of a missile, and he's now taking the position that they won't talk unless US first lift the sanctions. This is bluster. That's all I can tell.
Well, I think that it just basically shows we have an absolutely incompetent as well as a rudderless administration that is actually presiding in Washington, D.C. Okay, absolutely rudderless. We have had flip-flop. If one goes back and looks at our show, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, every day we have had a new statement on Iran from the State Department. Eventually, they said they're going to send a rep, which we covered yesterday, to Vienna. And last night, Ayatollah goes public and say, we don't want you. We don't want to be talking to you. We've already done a 24-year deal with China. Lift all the sanctions, and if you want to talk to us. It is a prophanic embarrassment to United States.
And in another flip-flop, Jen Psaki, the US has not discussed boycott of China 2022 Olympics. So this probably is again the government walking back what they said, that they were going to boycott China.
There's something clearly wrong, Sriji. There's something wrong, because the reason is, on one day you say State Department, on one day they say that we're going to boycott. The second say it is going to be taken up in the Senate. The third day the State Department says it is being considered and with other allies, coordinated. And then you have this kind of a statement, which is to say that the US has not discussed. So either there is a policy crisis, or there is a person crisis, or there is some interjections that is happening that is flushing out these inconsistencies that is coming up. It doesn't matter whether you want to boycott. It doesn't matter whether you don't want to boycott. Actually, you've got to make a statement, which is one statement, which says we are. And it is also possible that China has been issuing warning, I threaten you, don't boycott the Olympics. But just another consistent kind of flip-flops that we are seeing. The amazing truth about the US news, especially from White House, the press secretary, and the stuff is, it is a contradiction of stories day in and day out. It's a daily contradiction. Okay, one more contradiction we are going to see as we get into this news.
Yes, indeed. And Joe Biden suddenly now, in a continuous streak of issues, is leaving the podium without having his mask on. I mean, if you're preaching for the public that they have to have their masks on, surely the president must be practicing it, sir.
Well, let me use the expression Mr. Biden used. You, Mr. President Trump, you're killing the Americans. You're not wearing the mask. This was his statement in the press interview. If you remember in the debates, okay, I am here to protect you, but guess what? I'm going to be walking without the mask. Okay, I just said that because that's a political rhetoric to get your votes. Now I walk without the mask. Now, as I mentioned to you, we have to be sympathetic to Biden because he probably is not unwell and he's not well. But it just is another kind of an example of the inconsistencies and the blatant and brazen manner which they're able to get away, because we have a media that is collusive, we have tech platforms that is collusive, and then we have a circus of people around him who are collusive. So the reason is the truth is visible except to these guys.
And I think this is a direct question to America and mainstream media. When are you going to say that your emperor is not wearing any clothes?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a great question that P Gurus at P Gurus we have phrased and posed the question. I'm sure we'll get some responses as the media as our kind of media makes its way through.
And President Biden says that compromise is inevitable on the infrastructure bill. Okay, fine. So what is going to be compromised? And this is what we don't know. And seeking a 2.5 trillion hacks on American businesses, this is not going down well with the businesses, sir.
This is one more flip-flop, which we'll cover tomorrow because more details are coming out. He's saying now he's willing to reconsider corporate taxes because from the pressure lobbies. First they said they would take it. They would say that it's funded. Remember, Mr. Buttigieg basically said, we have a funding plan in place. We just take the money. By increasing from 21 to 28%, we take the money. Then businesses objected. We have park taxes overseas. By doing a minimum rate and 10%, we'll get the $2 trillion from overseas. So in other words, I mean, this has been my kind of contention, and this is where I had critiqued, and some people didn't, maybe felt that I was overtly arrogant. But the story is this, where I have a problem with Miss Janet Yellen, who is the Treasury Secretary, because she's an incredibly intelligent and an academic, but she has to stand firm, right? You would have never seen these kinds of idiotic rhetoric from Steve Mnuchin when he was the Treasury Secretary. Okay, you need to understand, okay, you have an expense, you need a funding model. So she has to be very clear. Under no circumstances I'm willing to compromise. The only way we can balance this and get this funding is through taxes. If the taxes is removed, we're going to leave a big hole. That's all she needs to say. Then she goes up, because at least she has made a very kind of what I call objective financial statement, which says how the funding will occur to cover this cost over the next 10 to 15 years.
And Fitton says that Pelosi Congress Assault on election integrity raises constitutional questions. What do you make of this? So every time they come back and accuse others, they themselves are guilty of the same thing, isn't it, sir?
So what is going on, sir, with this and all this stuff, the gun laws and so on and so forth? For every act in anticipation, right? In anticipation, states are passing laws which contravenes. Then it becomes a contention because execution cannot happen from the federal. Has to happen at the state level for the conduct of the elections. What's going to happen? Wyoming has just passed a law today, and then Kentucky passed a law which is effectively to state that voter ID is mandatory and is kind of required. Even in Georgia, they're saying if you're coming in person, you are going to require some form of identity or at least to establish yourself, what it is. So I think that what is going to happen is we are going to have the next 12 months whole series of litigations which is going to land in Supreme Court as these executive orders gets passed and becomes practically non-implementable.
And the fallout on the two Yemeni terrorists continues. Arizona Republican Representative Andy Biggs wants the Department of Homeland Security to reveal who ordered the removal of names. Did the House do it? And if it was the House, who in the House ordered it? These are serious questions, isn't it?
There's a serious questions. I don't know whether they're going to get to the answers. And given the plethora of issues that are likely to be on the table, I'm not sure how much is going to get through and how much is not going to get through. But this is another one. What you're going to see is over the next 2, 3, 4 years, some incident will happen in the United States, and they will find that this kind of happened at that kind of point of time. It's not going to happen something tomorrow, but this is likely to happen, in due course.
And in global news, China wants Washington not to boycott Winter Olympics. Or else what? What are
Well,
your thoughts, sir?
well, I think that basically what is going to happen is it's also China trying to make as much rhetoric and as much noise as possible. China recognizes that very soon, it is going to be in a lose-lose situation when the world eventually confronts. Okay, Russia is not a great power. I mean, people may think it is, but Russia is not. It's not even part of G7. Irrelevant. Turkey is not a great power. Iran is not a great power. These are the allies of kind of China. And the most powerful nations which are part of at least the US are countries like France, countries like UK, countries like Japan. Now, of course, India has emerged as a powerful country. Australia, Korea, these are kind of major powers which have trading relationship with United States and contributes to the significant part of the GDP. So you're going to see that these nations standing up and coming back and saying, okay, what is it that you do to us? Okay, you're not going to toe the line. You're not going to toe the line. And this could eventually something will, this is not going to happen. None of these countries are going to do something about it. I think we touched briefly on this specific topic. There has to be some dissent brewing within China against the present regime, because this is one of the most controversial regimes to preside over China. So something could happen internally. That's just my kind of opinion.
And Putin taunts Biden with hybrid warfare operations. The US pleads for refrain from escalation. This is again the developing situation on the border of Ukraine. We told you yesterday that Ukraine has stopped giving water to Crimea, and Russia has got its shackles up because now Crimea is a state of Russia. And this is one of those Putin plans, like he wanted to, like Sridharji said yesterday, he wants to be the Tsar of Russia again. And to show that he has the same kind of muscle as the Tsars did, he has annexed Crimea illegally. And this was done under Mr. Obama's watch, which nobody wants to ask what the heck he was doing at that point. Anyway, that's a different point, different time. Sir, what are your thoughts, sir? Where is this saber rattling going to end?
No, I think that the saber rattling will continue because the reason is Russia needs to be heard, must be felt. Remember that we'll get to that in a minute. Russia is being kind of left out. So there, we had an issue in Alaska. We had U.S. general commenting that there are even Russian planes one can see in that part of the world. And then what's happening is that the Navalny issue, as well as the COVID issue, besides the Crimean water issue that you kind of alluded to, is all kind of simmering up. There were anti-democracy, pro-democracy protests, and then on this Navalny situation around the kind of the Europe. So what he's doing is he's besides the saber rattling, he has now got this what you call as this hybrid. So he's got all his soldiers marching on the border. Okay, so therefore they are within the border, but they're not outside the border. But they're creating enough kind of tension, and so the EU guys are a little bit worried. So what did the United States do? It dipped its toe into the water by sending that the Seahawk vessel into the Bosphorus Sea, and then which is unwarranted at this stage. I mean, look, if there is a threat, NATO is there to kind of act. And then to go on and say, Baltic is not a Russian pond or lake, it stirred up. So I think that they were quiet. Now they're kind of saying, hey, you don't come and fish around with us. And that's what is going on.
And Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has one message in his call with Japanese Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi: Taiwan, Taiwan, Taiwan. So nothing raises their shackles as the word Taiwan, isn't it?
No, nothing, because I think this Taiwan has become very emotive. They must have got wind of the news that Mr. Suga, who is coming and meeting President Biden, I think on April 10th, if I'm right. After meeting President Biden, he's actually going to India to meet the Indian Prime Minister from here as a follow-on visit. Of course, all these things change subject to everything that goes on. They must have got wind that Taiwan is the topic which is on the top of the agenda. So Mr. Wang Yi is issuing a statement which is to say, don't dare to talk about Taiwan.
And in other news, the U.S. Destroyer Arleigh-Burke Class missile-guided destroyer, USS John McCain, has been transiting through the Taiwan Strait doing routine underway operations. It's been going on for several months now. And in fact, we will show you one of the pictures of that one here. Sridharji, I'm just putting up the picture. I will show it to you. It's up now, sir.
Yes.
The 7th Fleet Destroyer.
Yeah. Yeah. So April 7th, this is not, today is April 8th. So these operations were, remember the Asia-US kind of time zones and differences and so on. Around between April 5th and 7th, this John McCain was navigating through the Taiwanese kind of strait. Around the same time, it looks like the Chinese, sent their jets as well. In a clear and specific message that US is present with its destroyer and will do anything to kind of deter actions that is perceived in Taiwan.
Yes, indeed. And in other news, China sends more jets to Taiwan Strait. So this is all like move, counter move, isn't it?
Move and counter move. I think that there's a chess game that is kind of going on. Taiwan is very emotive seems to be very, very emotive to China. And Taiwan is now made its stand very clear. We are going to defend till the last kind of a soul. They have issued a formal public press statement, which is to say that, we are an independent kind of a nation. And I'm glad that these nations are all kind of standing up, including Japan has basically said Taiwan is a red flag.
And Japan seeks the first in-person Quad summit in June on G7 Sidelines. And Suga, like you said, is going to be visiting India after the US visit. So Japan is taking the lead in trying to get the Quad ministers visit in person, because India is not part of G7. I don't think Australia is either. So that's a good sign, isn't it?
It is a very good sign. It's a G7 plus 3, they call it. And Mr. Johnson had, had entertained this and had invited. You remember this meeting got postponed a couple of times because of it was supposed to be February, March. It got postponed because of the COVID situation. So they have recognized Japan, Korea, and Australia as 3 economic and strategic and military powerful nations in the region where there is a potential for maximum kind of conflict. Of course, you have Korean Peninsula as well because of the North Korean, loony. So I think this is a very positive sign, and I'm glad that they will be there, and this provides the opportunity, apparently, to restart the Quad more around the strategic as well as the security focus.
And Prime Minister Boris Johnson has also extended an invite to India, Australia, and Korea for the June 11th to 13th meeting at Corbis Bay, Cornwall. So this is also another interesting sign. So all the countries are now lining up. They're meeting together. They're trying to see how best to tackle China, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. So there's one is the Quad part of it. I think we covered yesterday that the G20 ministers, they need to create what they call a financial kind of stability fund to help weaker nations impacted as a result of the COVID. It is conceivable that something like that may happen, especially with these 3 nations kind of getting involved in those kind of discussions beyond the security dialogue. The reason apparently is that China was reticent and not transparent around the debt and the type of debt programs that it has inculcated, and many of the African nations, etc., were all kind of given packages. So they were reticent, so they couldn't come to a conclusion as to whether G20 can create a front, especially around this COVID issue.
Sir, I just wanted to get back to the point you made about internal dissension inside China. See, one way to start the whole process is China buys raw materials from its neighbors, whether it is Taiwan or Vietnam or Cambodia or Myanmar, and then makes the finished product, and then it sells it back to those countries along with the West, isn't it? So there could be some activity that could essentially cripple their economy, because there is no way you can, tell the people of China that, look, your regime is oppressive and that it is denying you basic civil rights. None of that works, isn't it?
No. Look, I think we should give enormous amount of credit to China on three things. The great planners, they are maniacal in execution, and they try and cover all their bases and angles. It is not so trivial. Even the supply chain shift that has happened to Taiwan, Vietnam, India, even to Korea, was a great thing that occurred. But having said that, the story therefore is, having said that, it is not a trivial exercise in terms of choking the supply chains and trying to bring China to the negotiating table. There are only two models. One is to walk away from them on the trade and shift more and more towards the other kind of the nations. And two is to see whether they can build some kind of an internal dissension to harmonize and to bring the nation to normalcy.
And we have lots of videos about the internal dissensions, even in the political rungs. There's the Jiang Zemin group, then the Hu Jintao group, and then there is the Xi Jinping group. And the Xi Jinping is the one that is now, controlling everything from the Jiang province with two A's. There are two provinces, very similar sounding, one with one A and one with two A's. It's the one with two A's that Xi Jinping comes from, and most of his honchos below him all come from there. So this is the small clique that is running China. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. So in India news, Indian vaccine diplomacy in Paraguay and Taiwan's support for India on vaccines is a big win. They've sent 100,000 samples and they're going to send 100,000 more. More importantly, I think Paraguay turned away the vaccines from China, isn't it?
Correct. Sinopharm, they turned away. China tried to intervene and basically to say, it can offer vaccines as a substitute. And then they used, again, the media to advocate their model, which is to say China is winning the global diplomacy and vaccine diplomacy kind of a war. There's lots of questions around the efficacy of the Sinopharm. People say it is between 50 to 60% efficacy in terms of its effectiveness. And it is great to see India taking a very strategic offensive foot and continuing to send the vaccines and counter the diplomacy as well as the disruptive agenda that China is in.
And in a major milestone, India surpasses United States as the fastest vaccinating country in the world with 3,093,861 vaccines just in one day.
It's an amazing number. 3 million is an amazing number. I know there's lots of news coming out of India. I know that, the headline news flashes 100 and India crosses now the highest 126,000 because there's a lot of people who feel any adversarial news which targets Modi and India is a great kind of a news. But then once you get down into the numbers become kind of, false itself out. I think out of this big number, almost, as I said, between 60 to 70% or 65% is located in one state, or between, depending on whose statistics you are talking to, somebody says 47, somebody says 60. But when you isolate it to three states, most of the cases boils down to that. There's about less than 1,000 deaths as a result of these events happening. That doesn't mean there's vaccine shortage. That doesn't mean that India is in a kind of a deep hole. It doesn't mean, it just simply means, I don't need to, P. Gurus has been extensively covering the issues in Maharashtra. It is rampant with corruption issues and problems. And these cases are going forward and backward on CBI and so on. So to deflect and direct, so they run these types of kind of campaigns without actually looking into the data.
And in Make in India, Modi government approves 4,500 crore scheme for solar photovoltaic modules to reduce imports by around 17,500 crores per year. For this, they have also have a PLI scheme, sir. Is that true?
Yeah, the PLI is a PLI scheme. It's a PLI scheme. Yes, indeed.
So
yeah.
Can you expand a little bit upon what a PLI scheme is?
It's what you call as a government substitutes capital. It's called as the program linked incentive scheme. Either it is given by way of cash or it is given by way of concessions and tax to the extent of that amount. So which institutions which are investing capital can claim credit for that amount. So there is an incentive program in place for capital deployment, either offset by cash or if offset by subsidies or offset by some kind of tax concessions that are given. So that is why it's called a program linked incentive scheme. So when you hit those numbers and thresholds, then automatically these things kind of, kick in.
And it's expected to create 400,000 jobs and exports worth almost 64,000 crores. That is the target. We have to wait and see. But excellent scheme, in my opinion, sir. We have always been, appreciative of any good thing that any government has done. So this is one of those things where I think we should laud the Indian government.
Indeed, I think that this PLI program, as part of the macro reforms, people complain constantly, and I've talked to some of these Indian experts and economic experts and pundits. I said, why foreign media continues to kind of say, the macroeconomic reforms are not happening, bankruptcy is not happening. So that is the reason why it is. So the way they differentiate is there are two types of people. One, who are who want to kind of continue to find the next complaint that they can think of, right? So that's one set of people. Then they say, look at the inflow of capital that is coming in by way of investments. Look at the portfolio managers, look at the fund managers. So there's no correlation. The portfolio managers as well as the fund managers, both under FPI and FTI, look at the numbers. They tell a different story. Does it have any correlation to macro reforms that these people are kind of talking about? So you have this disconnect, one part. The second part, I don't know. It's probably true. India, like many other countries, don't know how to kind of shape their narrative and communicate kind of their narrative in a manner. So somebody has to stand up, like Honorable Minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, or somebody within the CEA, which is to say, people talk about macroeconomic reforms. Here are 6 reforms that we have put in place that has a 3 to 5 year kind of a gestation, right? So therefore, it's not a micro reform. In micro reform is when you give cash to somebody immediately. Here's the macro reform. And here's the economic multiplier as a consequence of that. Import substitution, export numbers, and potential job kind of creation, and the long-term kind of justification in terms of the reorchestration of the industry. I'm certainly not an Indian expert. So somebody, of that people who are there, who are doing cutting and cooking this kind of numbers, should be able to articulate this. So at least you can kind of have a framework for discussion. Okay, is it effective, not effective? Is it working? But there is macro reforms underway.
Absolutely. And in Ladakh standoff, India and China will discuss disengagement on the 9th of April, which is tomorrow. The issues that are going to be talked about are Gogra Hot Springs and Depsang. These are the ones that are on the agenda. We'll have to wait and see what plays out. Sir, let's move on to COVID update, unless you have to say something about this.
No, I think we should move forward.
Yeah. In COVID update, Morgan Freeman rips people who don't get corona vaccine. This is very important. I think we need to all decide to take this vaccine, let the vaccine do its work. And both Sridharji and I have taken the vaccine. We are going to take the second dose and we have to face whatever it is. But it is important that the body develop antibodies to deal with this, because there are going to be more mutations, more variations. This is going to be like your flu shot, isn't it, sir?
It is. It is going to be an annual ritual. It's not going to go away. Again, we encourage everybody to be bold, brave, take both the shots. Okay, one shot is not enough. You need both the shots. Whichever you want to take, Covishield, Covaxin, Pfizer, Moderna, anything that you feel, all these vaccines are kind of working. It's important to get vaccinated, but vaccination alone is not enough. You got to have your discipline. You got to wear your mask, and you got to make sure that you follow due protocols until these antibodies settle well into your body, into your bloodstream and mainstream. Just because you've taken a vaccine, it doesn't mean you can go out and flaunt every rule in the world.
And the CDC director says that the UK variant is now the most common virus strain in the US. And in markets, Jamie Dimon says that China lacks clear path to global dominance. He also says that fintech is one of the biggest competitive threats to banks. What are your thoughts, sir? Now Jamie Dimon is also coming out. We know that Goldman Sachs has been, playing, and Elon Musk will take bitcoins for his cars. So everybody is now jumping onto blockchain technology.
Everybody is. I think we will publish this letter once we get a formal consent. This is an annual letter that Jamie Dimon writes to his shareholders, so it's public information. But I think it's there are one or two or three letters that I would encourage people, at least from the U.S. context, one should read. One is the Warren Buffett letter that people should read. Jamie Dimon's letter, which we'll publish, and similarly people like Disney and so on. There's about 3-4 companies which articulates, where the companies are, where the vision is, and so on. For the first time, Jamie Dimon has touched on China, and he was quite effusive, which is to say that, look, US is well organized, well orchestrated. It's not just going to disappear. There are lots of systems and structures in place. There is no clear linear path that China has defined in terms of being global dominance. Aspirational is one thing, but putting execution behind it with rules and law is different. So this is the case that he's trying to make.
And the Biden measure would capture 2 trillion profits of United States companies from overseas. This is what the Department of Treasury says. This is again the ongoing debate that we're talking about. 28% for companies in the US and 21% outside. Effectiveness, implementation, what really plays out on the ground, we have to wait and see. Any thoughts, sir?
No, I think that I think we touched on this specific topic, which is to say, in case where's this money coming from? I think they're trying to struggle to figure out a way by which they can rationally justify to the market that there is a funding in place.
And crude again is below 60. It's at $59.64, and Bitcoin has dipped a little bit. It is down to 54,000 now, and we have to wait and see. I think Sridharji has explained it excellent. If one guy jumps in, one hedge fund jumps in and says that I'm going to hedge some of my bets in Bitcoin, the Bitcoin value starts seeing a rise. But I think we should not place too much faith or importance on the number. This is still, you've got a distance to go, isn't it?
It has got a distance to go, and I think that nobody is talking short term. So the opportunistic gains that happens, is complete. Remember, we covered this, but just to rejog the memory, Coinbase is going for an IPO. It's one of the largest exchanges in the world. So they're going to launch an IPO. Whenever you launch an IPO, that means it's kind of real. So Bitcoin will exist as a commodity. Occasionally it'll find various kinds of uses. Blockchain as an underlying technology is here. There's no doubt about it, Shinji.
And there have been talk about even paying salaries in bitcoins. We have to see if the people accept it. The most important thing is it has to be widely accepted. Overstock.com had said that they will take Bitcoin for their product. This was about 2-3 years ago. Then the CEO of Overstock changed. I don't know the status right now on what that is. Now Elon Musk is saying this. So you'll have this, singular events where people will come and say, okay, we will take it, but we have to wait and see. So with that, we bring today's episode to an end. And if there's anything else you would like to add in summary, because I think there's one news that I haven't verified yet, but I wanted to tell you this, that tell our viewers that the Russian foreign minister wanted to meet with Modi, but when Modi came to know that the Russian foreign minister was going to stop by at Pakistan on his way back to Moscow, Modi refused to meet him. This is the first time that a Russian foreign minister has been turned away by the Indian Prime Minister, sir. I don't know if you've had a chance to verify this news.
No, sir, I'm not verified, but I will not be surprised if such decisions are taken, because I think today I told you India is a very powerful nation. India has very clear priorities. And India is asserting its rights. India will be unafraid. You don't want to give us funding? No problem. It's fine. We'll find an alternative. Okay. We are now a bigger economy than you. India is a bigger economy than Russia.
Yes,
So
yes,
therefore we are more
yes.
powerful because we are all kind of all around. So I think he's delivering a very clear message if that is the case. And I think Russians are going down very fast because of their bad association with China. They were acting as a good buffer, and they had a good nuclear set of friends, but now they're going very rapidly down.
And with that, we bring our episode to a close. We'll be back again tomorrow, bright and early. Thank you for watching and thanks for subscribing. Namaskar.
Thank you. Namaskar. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.